Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and we're back over here at the PS4. It's been some time since I've covered this, probably a few years actually, since I've really covered anything on the PS4. But I'm going to be covering this here because we have a pretty new jailbreak that released pretty recently, which works up to firmware version 12.02. This here comes in the form of a BDJB implementation from developer GoldHEN. Phonetically, I might not be getting it 100% right, but that is their name according to this tweet here. Now, there might be some confusion because even if you read this here, it does state that this works up to PS4 12.50, so this is only for PS4, and even though I said 12.02, that is still accurate. You see, the exploit it's using for its entry point does work up to firmware 12.50, but the current kernel exploit, which allows us to have a jailbreak, only works up to firmware 12.02, and that is the lapse exploit. So keep in mind, if there's a kernel exploit that comes out for firmware 12.50, this can be updated and we can use this on higher firmwares, but at the time of recording this, this will only give you a full jailbreak up to firmware 12.02, and you have to be on at minimum firmware 9.0 as it states here. This is exciting, however, because not only this exploit is pretty stable, but it is also pretty fast to load up as well too. So as long as you have a compatible PS4 and once you have a disk burned, you really just need to, when you turn on your PS4, insert the disk, run it, and then within a few seconds, you have a jailbroken system. Now to get some basic questions out of the way, this does work on every single model of the PS4, meaning it will work on the original PS4, the PS4 Slim, and the PS4 Pro. However, there is no PSN access on here. So for people who are asking if this is going to get you banned, technically it can't because you really can't get on PlayStation Network to begin with. We are going to be getting onto the internet, but you must be on the latest firmware for PlayStation Network access, and we cannot do that with this jailbreak. I also get asked quite a bit if it's possible to downgrade the firmware on a PS4, and the answer is no, but yes, in a way. Real quick, it won't be covered in this video because it's going to be a lot more than what people would be wanting to do, but you can revert the firmware possibly to the previous firmware version that is available on your system. But do keep in mind, it is not an easy process. It does require opening up your console, soldering in some hardware, and performing some sensitive operations to the system itself in order to possibly load up a lower firmware. Because just because you could do all this does not mean you're going to be able to run that lower firmware. If you're wanting to know more information on this, you can check out the firmware revert section over in the PS4 section of console mods, and they have pretty much everything covered here. But again, this is not going to be covered here. This is just saying it's possible to do depending on the circumstances for your console, although keep in mind it is an undertaking which most people watching this will not want to perform on their systems. Now, if you'd like to do this on your own PS4, there's a few prerequisites we need to satisfy here. The first thing is going to be having a system. Of course, you're going to need your PS4. Like I said, it works on any model of the PS4, and it must be within that firmware range. In order to check that, we can come up here, go to Settings, go down to System, and then go to System Information. And you're going to look for the system software value right here. Now, like I said, with this BDJB and lapse implementation, this does work between firmwares 9.00 and 12.02. So if you're within that firmware range, you are good to go. If you're on a firmware higher than 12.02, you will not be able to perform this. And if you're on a firmware lower than 9.00, well, you're going to need to update to get within this range here. This system I'm going to choose to keep on 9.0 because the thing with PS4s and jailbreaks, if you haven't done this before, is that typically the lower firmware you're on, the more jailbreak options and choices that you have. And by that I mean, with this system, for example, I could jailbreak it using BDJB. I could also jailbreak it over a network using PPPone, or I could just jailbreak it through the built-in internet browser itself. And many of those options do close up the higher firmware you take your system to. So now that we verified our console is compatible, you're also going to need a USB drive, and we're also going to need to burn a Blu-ray disc. This cannot be a CD, it cannot be a DVD, it must be a Blu-ray, and for that you have to use a Blu-ray burner. Thankfully, we don't need to be picky about our USB drive, but when it comes to a Blu-ray burner, you do have several options available, and I know some people might be shocked at the prices here for these, and whether you want to go with an internal one or an external one is going to be up to you. I'm personally using an external one, and they do range in prices. The cheapest ones I've been seeing here have been $50, but they can range up to $120, $130 or so. So So it really just depends on your budget. But keep in mind here, if you're searching for a drive, you're going to want to look at these listings carefully. While as this is a Blu-ray player, it is not a burner. It can burn CDs and DVDs, but not Blu-rays. So make sure whichever drive you're going to get is capable of burning Blu-ray discs. Additionally, you're going to need at least one blank Blu-ray for this. You cannot use an existing game or an existing movie. It has to be a blank disc. To keep this simple, you are going to need to have a BDR or BDRE disc. Now, a BDR disc means that you can only burn to it one time, which is fine if you're going to just do this once, but keep in mind if there's going to be updates in the future, you'll have to burn a new disc every single time. Alternatively, you could use BDRE discs, which are the ones that I use. This means that you can burn something to that disc, but in case there's ever an update to this jailbreak or any other jailbreak, you can always overwrite and reburn data to that disk without having to pull a new one out. So it really just depends on what your preference is. These are actually the ones I use right here, but you can go ahead and pick whichever ones you want to get. Now, we don't need to hook up our system to the internet just yet, but we are going to start the prep process. So what I'd recommend doing is going over to your computer to get everything downloaded, sorted out, and well, burned. Now, the first thing we're going to need is the latest build of BDJB available. All the links for these downloads are going to be down below in the description, and I would recommend taking some time out to read the README here. Thankfully, it's broken down pretty well, and it's easy enough to follow. So you can go ahead, give this a read, check out everything, make sure you're in a good spot. Once this is all done though, you can come over to the releases section, and we're going to need to grab the download. Go ahead and look for the latest build of this available, and the one we're going to download is the Lapse ISO. There's also the remote jar loader, but this essentially means whenever we run our disk, we're going to have to use an external device to push a payload to actually get us into a modified state. But the Lapse ISO will let us just run a payload from the hard drive or a USB drive, which is what most people are wanting to do. Either way, find the Lapse ISO, download it, and save it somewhere you can easily find it. The next thing we'll need here is the latest build of GoldHEN. This is essentially going to be the custom firmware that we're going to be activating once we get all this set up here. You can come over to Sistro's Coffee page, and from here you can click on the shop, and you're going to look for the latest version of GoldHEN. You can see that there's several different betas that are out, but you can just go ahead, grab the latest one, and once you click on it, from here, you can go ahead and donate if you so wish to, which I would recommend doing if you do value this software and developer, but if you're wanting to get the download, you can still hit 0, click get now, and then go through the process of getting your download. The next thing you don't necessarily need, but I would recommend to make things easier, is downloading the PS4 store or the Homebrew store. Now you could, again, give the README here a good read, and once you're done covering this, you can come over to the releases section, and the one that we're going to be downloading here is going to be the latest build available. The one we're going to download here will be the Store R2 package, and even if this number changes here, just keep in mind this is the one we're going to get. We don't want the legacy package, and we don't want the PS5 package, so go ahead and grab this one. Now, everyone has their preferred burning software available, also depending on your OS as well, but if you're going to be using Windows like myself here, I'm going to be using ImageBurn for this. If you haven't used it before, you can download it from the link in the description. It's easy enough to use, it's free, and it works pretty well. And finally, if you need any assistance extracting files, namely the GoldHEN archive that we have to download, you can go ahead, download, and install 7-zip. So here we go, this is everything we have. Now the first thing we can do here is go ahead and fire up ImageBurn. It'll come up like so, and make sure your Blu-ray burner is hooked up to your computer. Now once it is hooked up, you can click on Write Image File to Disk, make sure it loads in, insert a disk if you have not already, and then either browse for your ISO, or you can just drag and drop your ISO right here. When you go to burn this, I typically prefer to burn at the slowest speed I can, so this one here is only supporting 2x, so you can go to write speed and then change it to the slowest speed there. Otherwise, if you don't want to look at that, you can just set it to 1x and it will default to the slowest speed. Verifying this is optional. You can either enable or disable it, but it doesn't take too long to verify. And once you're all ready to roll, you just need to click on this button to burn. Now, if you're like me and you're using a BDRE disk, it's going to bring up this message right here saying the disk needs to be formatted before you can write to it. Would you like to format now? And you're going to want to say yes to this. It'll go through the process of writing zeros to the entire disk. So this first burn could take maybe upwards of an hour, but don't worry, after that, whenever you reuse this disk, if you have to burn it again, it takes much less time. You just have to do this here the first time. Alternatively, if you're just using a standard BDR disk, or you're going to be rewriting a BDRE disk, again, make sure everything is set up, click on burn. Since mine is a BDRE disk, it's going to tell me the data will be overwritten, so I'll go ahead and say yes, and then just give it a few seconds here. Thankfully, this image is really small. It's only about 16 megabytes, so it burns pretty quickly. And here, as you can see, it took 32 seconds to burn this, so now I need to actually verify the disk itself. So I'm going to pop this back in and hit OK. And it shouldn't take too long. And there we go, it's completed. So as you can see, it was that quick to burn off our disk. We can now go ahead, eject it, hit OK, and we can close out of here. And congratulations, that was the hardest part of this jailbreak. I'm not kidding. I'm really not kidding when I say that. Burning that disk was probably the most challenging part here. So now we need to set up our USB drive. Go ahead, plug in a USB drive that you have, and you can check the properties, and you must make sure the file system is either exFAT or FAT32. If you're going to be primarily using this with your PS4, or you're just going to be handling files larger than 4 gigabytes, I'd recommend using exFAT on here. If you want to format this, make sure you back up any data you care about, right-click, format your drive, pick either exFAT or FAT32. Like I said, if you're going to be dealing with files larger than 4 gigs, you're going to want to pick exFAT. Default is fine there, quick format's okay, hit OK, and that's all done. So once our USB drive has been prepared, we just need to find our GoldHEN 7-zip archive, and you can right-click it and use 7-zip to extract it into its own folder. Open up the GoldHEN folder, and within here, you're going to look for goldhen.bin. We're going to right-click, copy this out, close out of here, go to your USB drive, and then right-click and paste this in the root of the USB drive. The next thing we need to do is we need to rename this. So make sure you find this, right-click, rename, and we're going to call it payload.bin. It needs to look exactly like that. And to verify this, if you're using Windows, you can click on View, Show, and make sure file name extensions has been enabled. This is going to be required the first time you jailbreak your PS4, and then when you want to update your GoldHEN in the future, you can just do this yet again. I'll cover that process later in the video. The next thing is going to be our package files. Now this here is a Homebrew package, which is the Homebrew store, and in order to copy this out, we just need to drag and drop it into the root of the USB drive. And there we go, it's now been copied over. Now this, like I said, is a PS4 piece of Homebrew, but what about other packages such as emulators, applications, maybe even games as well? Well, I do have a couple other here just for example that I'm going to copy over. The first one is Silent Hill, which is a PS1 game I converted over to this. I have another one here as an example, which is Wild Guns Reloaded, so I'm just going to copy both of these over. So for our examples, we have a PS4 piece of Homebrew, a PS1 game converted to a PS4 package, and a PS4 game right here. It doesn't really matter which ones they are as long as they are compatible with the PS4, but any package files are just going to sit in the root of your USB drive so you can install them from there. Either way, that is it for our USB prep. So once you have your payload set up and you have any packages you want to install over, you can come out here, right click, eject your drive, and take it over to your system. Back over the PS4, there's going to be some prep work we have to do. The first thing you should do is come up to your settings, go down to, let's see, it's going to be System, and go to automatic downloads, and we're just going to disable all these here, especially this one, system software update files. The reason for this is you do not want your system to auto update now or in the future. If it updates to the latest firmware, that is the easiest way to lose your jailbreak. So once you have all of these disabled here, we should be in a better spot. The next thing you'll need to do is go back and make sure enable HDCP has been enabled. This is going to be necessary for BDJB to work. Now we can go back here. Another setting we're going to have to check out is going to be notifications, and within here make sure disable pop-ups while playing video is disabled. And finally, if needed, you can set up your network. Now do keep in mind here, we're doing this before this process, so you could either do it before or after you jailbreak, but do keep in mind here that yet again I would recommend going into automatic downloads and just disabling everything. Now in order to get onto your network, if you have not already done so, you'll need to go to the network section. Within network, go to connect to the internet, make sure that's enabled, and then go to set up internet connection. And from here, you can go through the process depending on whether you're using a LAN cable or Wi-Fi. For this, since I'm using LAN, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do an easy connection, and we should be good. There we go. So once that's all connected, we should now be ready to start the process of jailbreaking our system. So go ahead, take your USB drive, plug it in if you have not already, and you can now take your BDJB disk and load it up into the disk drive of your system. Give it a few seconds here, a disk icon should pop up in the top right of your menu here, and then once this is completed, you should be able to find this here once it's recognized. There we go. Now in order to launch this, all you have to do is, well, open this up. Now, if you've never ever played a Blu-ray disc on here before, keep this in mind. You might get a message like this. There's a couple messages that could pop up. One of them will ask you to connect to the internet if you have not already, and that is okay. You are not downloading a system update, but in order to run a Blu-ray disc on here, the system must connect to the internet one time to get the necessary license. Again, this is not a system software update, it's not a firmware update, this is just to enable your system to play Blu-ray movies. The second message you might get is this one asking if you want to allow your Blu-ray to access the internet, and to this you can say yes. And after you say yes to those two messages, they won't pop up on your system again. Since I've already initialized mine before, I'm going to tap the X button and let it load in. Give it a few seconds, it's going to be at this black screen here, and then here we go. We're going to have a bunch of jar loader text fly down. It's going to say the lapse exploit has run, we have the AIO patch completed, the USB payload has been found, which is why we needed that drive. It's now been transferred to our internal drive. And the last one here should be GoldHEN has been loaded. And once GoldHEN has been loaded, you should be in a good spot. I typically don't exit out of this until there's no more pop-ups, but once the pop-ups have stopped like that, you can now go ahead and press the PlayStation button on your controller to exit out. Once you're back at the XMB, press the Options button on BDJB, go down to Close Application, hit OK, and after a few seconds this should close out. Now keep in mind it might not be as seamless every single time. If you get a message telling you that you need to restart and try again, well, go ahead, exit out, bring up the menu, go to power, restart your PS4 and try that process again. Additionally, if you're running BDJB and then it ends up crashing after it jailbreaks and it closes out of here, that is fine as long as you've been able to run GoldHEN successfully. It doesn't matter if BDJB crashes, you just need it to jailbreak your system. And with all of that, you can now verify this is jailbroken by coming up here, and you should have a new option which is GoldHEN. So let's go ahead and drill through this here. Go ahead, enter GoldHEN, and we can just go through all of these menus. The first one's going to be the debug settings, in which you can select where you want to change your package source for the package installer and such. For the debug settings here themselves, I would recommend running the full menu on here. You could also enable game debug settings if you want to. These ones I really haven't needed to change. If you go to your cheat settings here, we want to make sure the cheat menu is activated. You can even show cheat menu on game options. If you want to show the title ID and such, I'll go ahead and show you this, for example, like title ID and app version number. You can do that on the XMB, although it might clutter it up a little more and might even slow it down if you have too many things installed. You can update the cheat archive, but we're actually going to do that later. So I'll X out of here, go to plugin settings. From here you can enable the plugin loader, and you might not be able to enable the game patch plugin yet, but I'm going to cover this later on. So even if you don't enable this yet, it's fine. If you go to the game overlay, you can set a frames per second counter. You can even enable system info when you're playing your games and choose what you want, change the text position, text color, and even have scan lines on here too. So there's a lot of really nice settings. For the server settings here, I do like to have an FTP server up and running, which is nice when you're connected to your network, and even the bin loader server, so if you want to, you can push additional payloads that way. If you want to enable those are up to you. I like to have both of them enabled. You can also go to the Klog settings, enable TTY redirect. I personally don't use this here, and I don't really run into debugging, so I keep it disabled. And finally, within your settings, enable rest mode support. That would be great. We don't need to do anything with a PPPoE patch. That's going to be if you're going through your network for the modification. And finally, for the date and time, you can come over here and you can update the date and time. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And even if you want to automatically do this, you can enable that as well too. I just need to do that once and I'll be okay. For fun, if you want to go through the About section, you can check out even more information and features here, and even check out an old school cracktro. Let's actually see what this is about. Okay, that's cool. I actually haven't seen this until now. That's pretty awesome. I'm not going to spoil this for you all, so if you're running this here, you can check it out for yourself. So now we can go ahead and exit out of our GoldHEN settings. You can see here that this looks a little different. So for all of our packages here, I do have the title ID as well as the version number showing up. Again, that's totally up to you. If you like that aspect, cool. If you don't like this aesthetic, then you can disable that as well, and you just go back into your GoldHEN settings. Now let's go ahead and get some package files installed. In order to do that, we can come up here, go all the way over to settings. Within here, scroll all the way down to debug settings, go into game, go to the package installer, and then you can install your packages. Now, like I said, I have the Homebrew store, Silent Hill, and Wild Guns Reloaded. You can pick these all individually, or you can just hit install all, which I'm going to do that since that'll be the easier option. And there we go, all 3 have been installed. So once that's done, it should exit you out of here. You can press the PlayStation button to exit out, and check it out, we have some new additions. We have Wild Guns Reloaded, which is our PS4 game, the PS1 game, Silent Hill, as well as the Homebrew store. So just to show you how these are working, if I fire up a PS4 game, for example, let's fire up Wild Guns Reloaded. Give it a few seconds here. And here we go, it was able to load up pretty immediately, like no issue right there. So that is wonderful to see. I can go ahead, close out of this, hit OK, that's all good. And let's go ahead and try some good old emulation. So this here, like I said, is a PS1 game that I ended up converting to a PS4 package file. It's telling us press start to play. So start, that is a good sign. And let's see how long this will take to load in. There we go. There we go, classic right there. So we do have Silent Hill up and running and working, which is great. I'm going to go ahead and close out of here, and the last thing we're going to do here is load up the Homebrew store, which is really the one I was recommending here. So in order to launch the Homebrew store, again, make sure you're connected online if you have not already done so, and once you are online, you can go ahead and fire up the Homebrew store. It's going to tell you an update is required, and just hit OK to update. Once the update's been applied, hit OK yet again. And of course, if you enjoy the Homebrew store, you could donate and support this here. There's a few options available. So once you see that, you can hit OK yet again, wait for it to cache everything, and wait for it to load in. So here we go, we are now running the latest version of Homebrew Store. It's going to go in and show us what's available here and even updates. Now the update section is nice because if you come over here, for example, and you have some Homebrew applications that are installed either now or even in the future that need to be updated, well, you can just update them pretty easily. I have 3 here that need to be updated, so I'm actually going to perform that. You can go ahead, hit X yet again to download that, and let it do its thing. I'll go ahead and let this download, then install. And there we go, once installed, it should tell us that it is ready to use. So we can go ahead, exit out of here, and I'll update my other ones as well too. So there we go, we got icon mask, and you don't just have to stay here to let that download. I'll go into my updates yet again, go over to payload guest, and get this one updated. Again, if you don't have any updates now, that is totally fine. This system was previously jailbroken, so I just had to update a few things on here, but once we're good, well, we're good. Now you can go ahead and check this out and download other applications you might want to. The one that I'm definitely going to recommend here is going to be the PS4 Cheats Manager because, well, this will allow you to do some pretty cool stuff with your games. So I'm going to go ahead and, well, reinstall latest. I did uninstall this here, but I guess we're just gonna have to pop it back on. And if you want to search for something, you can hit X on search for, and if I wanted to, for example, I could look up, even though I see it right here, remote, because I do want to get the remote package installer. In short, this will just allow you to send packages over to your console through your network and then install them that way. So I'm going to go ahead, hit download on there, and well, we have a few downloads that we have sorted out now. Looking at this, there is nothing in our queue, which means all of the apps I wanted to update or install have been completed. So I can close out of here, close out of this yet again. That's all good, and you can see we have a few updates here. We do have the 3 applications that I updated, as well as the one that I wanted, the remote package installer, and the one I recommended here, which is the PS4 Cheats Manager. So let's go ahead and drill into this. Once you see this on your screen, go ahead, tap the X button, and load it up. So once it loads up here, you can just go to the update option. That's going to be the first one, and we're going to update the cheats, patches, and plugins over the internet. Find this option, tap the X button on here, and we're going to do all these individually. The first one is going to be cheats, so go ahead and let it download. There we go. The next one is going to be patches, and the final one is going to be plugins. And there we go. So we have all that set up. Now with that done, we can go ahead and close out of here yet again. And we're now going to have to tweak a few things within our GoldHEN settings. So in order to do that, go all the way up here, go to GoldHEN. We're going to go to the cheat settings. Make sure yet again, cheat menu is enabled. You can show the cheat menu on game options, which I would recommend. We don't need to update the cheat archive, but we do have that available, which is great. The next thing we're going to go to is plugin settings. Make sure the plugins loader is enabled, and now you can enable the game patch plugin. And as long as we have all of those settings enabled, we should be in a better spot. Now you might be wondering why I asked you to download this, and especially what you can do with this. Well, there's a few things that we can do. The first thing I'm going to show you is actually the cheats themselves here. So if you want to load up cheats for a game, the example I'm going to bring up here is, let's go ahead and do Bloodborne, because I know this is one that a lot of people have been excited about. If you go ahead, fire up Bloodborne, if you have this installed, go ahead, wait a bit. And here we go, we're seeing all this, so the game actually booted up, but once it boots up successfully, you can go ahead, I'm going to do play offline. There we go, has to create, update, save data, all that fun stuff. But what you can do here is hold down the share button for a few seconds. And once you do that, it's going to bring up the GoldHEN cheat menu. Now you do have a few options available here. This will depend game to game, by the way. So you can see here that if you want to, it looks like Shinigami has made several cheats for this, but you can also go through different cheat setups here with the R1 and L1 buttons. So here's a second one available, here's a third one, fourth one, and fifth one. And in order to enable any of these, you just have to go through, and then you can check any of these to enable them. One hit kill, for example, infinite stamina, anything like this. Let's actually go ahead and give this a try. All right, let's see if we do one hit kill right here. Oh, there we go. All right, so that is an example of the cheat running. So as you can see, we were able to get that just fine. Now there's also additional things we could do if you don't just want to cheat, but you actually want to improve the game itself. Cheats are awesome, don't get me wrong, but if you want to actually patch your game and do a few more cool things with it, this is where the PS4 Cheats Manager does come into play. So you can go ahead, fire this up. And for this, we're going to go into the patches section now. Once this loads up, navigate over to the patches section, tap the X button, and you can see all the games that do have patches available. Now, there's a lot here, and you can go ahead and browse through them and see what's available. And you can see not only the title ID matters, but also the version of the game itself as well. So you can check and see what's available. Otherwise, you can also just tap the triangle button, and it will only show the games that you have installed. So PT, for example, is one of those I have installed, and from here, there's actually several nice options available. You can see 60 frames per second patch, disable camera blur, film grain, lens flare, even screen space reflections. So those are not cheats, but those are at least going to be enhancements and changes to the game that you can apply. The one I would like to try here though will be Bloodborne. So for this, I'm going to go with the 60 frame per second patch. That one's been enabled. We can go ahead, disable chromatic abrasion. That's actually nice, I could do this. Disable motion blur. Let's go ahead and do the resolution patch to 720p, and we can also skip the intro. There we go. Now keep in mind what you're going to see might not be perfect because I am using the base original PS4. I'm not running this on a PS4 Pro, but like I said, with any other patches, you can go in and enable those as well too. I'm going to go ahead and have some fun with this here. Once those are all done, we can go ahead and close out of the PS4 Cheats Manager, and now with those patches applied to our game, we can go back into our game and fire it up. Now, once the patches are applied successfully, it should tell you how many patches have been applied, as well as the patch lines applied. I'll go ahead, hit OK there, and I did take a moment to enable the frame per second counter so we can actually see that this is loaded in and working. So you can see in the bottom right hand corner that the 60 frame per second patch has been loaded in. Let's go ahead and continue from that save. Now keep in mind here, I am running this on a base PS4, which means I'm not going to have the same benefits that a PS5 or even a PS4 Pro is going to have with this. But you can see in the bottom left that I am running at around 60 frames per second as opposed to, well, 30 frames. And visually, this game does look a little bit better, at least in my opinion here. It does look a little cleaner with some of the options that we've disabled. So there we go. That's just an example of some of the patches that have been applied and working in real time. For fun for you all and curiosity for myself, I'm actually going to try out PT as well. I have played it on here before, of course, but with the patches, this will be a little fun. So just like before, we have the 3 patches applied. The 3 patch lines have been applied, and wow, that is an immediate difference. I've played this game quite a bit, and this is without a doubt the cleanest I've seen it. Not only those extra visual effects have been disabled, but I have not seen the game run at 60 frames per second until now. So, you know what, that's a trip. That's awesome. Oh, and it went down to 30, so that is, alright, this isn't necessarily important for the tutorial here, but this is interesting. If you come back here, you could see it's 60, but if you just start moving this way, it drops down to 30. It's just interesting to see at least. So you can see that in full effect. That's just walking in the hallway. Okay, cool. I'll play around with this later. Now let's go ahead and talk about aftercare for your PS4 now that it's been jailbroken. The first thing is going to be, let's say you're done playing your game, so you go ahead, come over here, go to power, and turn off your PS4. Now once your console restarts, you might notice that it's going to look a little different, as in it's actually going to look like a completely stock system. You'll notice here that we no longer have GoldHEN available, so we don't have that option anymore, and if you try to fire up any of your games, application, or content, you're going to see they all have padlocks on them, and if we try to launch any of them, well, we're going to get an error message like this. This is intentional, and that is because this jailbreak is not persistent. That's just how the PS4 is by nature. In order to jailbreak the system again, you have to go through the process of running the jailbreak. In order to do that, well, you just need to take your BDJB disk, pop it in, and run it. The nice thing is though, since we've copied the payload over as designed, we no longer need to use that USB drive until we need to update that payload again. So you can remove your USB drive, and if you just have the disk only, you can go ahead and fire it up like this. So we're coming over here. After a bit, we have all the text, BDJ Lapse has loaded in. We have the AIO pouch completed successfully. And there we go, it was able to find the internal payload, so it ended up executing that. And GoldHEN has successfully loaded. We're now also going to get some pop-ups for FTP and bin loader if you have them enabled. And like I said, I typically like to wait until all of the notifications here have completed. And once they've disappeared, we can now press the PlayStation button to close out of this. And from here, options, go down to close, hit OK, and we are back in a jailbroken state, thankfully. There we go. You can see here the PlayStation Plus logo has changed to GoldHEN. We have all of our settings available, and now if we try to launch something such as, well, I can go ahead and launch the Homebrew store again. We can bring it up, it does not give us an error, and it should bring us where we need to go. After a few seconds, it was able to successfully load in, so we're in a good spot at this point now. Oh, and it was able to check for, do I have an update already? Really? Oh, okay, I guess Apollo's still showing up there. I'm not going to worry about it for now, so I'll go ahead and close out of here, but as you can see, that is how that works. So let's say you don't want to run BDJB every single time you turn on your system. Well, that's totally fine. You could also use rest mode for this. In order to do that, for example, you can see here that I have my jailbreak up and running. I'm going to hold down the PlayStation button, go to power, and enter rest mode. So now it took a bit, but I end up pulling the system out of rest mode here. The FTP server is back up and running, bin loader is loading up again, and you can see here, those are great signs because we do have GoldHEN, which means without completely turning off our system, we still have access to everything here. I can actually even, let me fire up Silent Hill, different game. But you can see here that this is loading up just fine. We're not getting any errors. And there's our frames per second counter, so you can see here that this is running, this is working, and we're not running into any errors here, thankfully. So we were still able to retain our jailbreak, at least in rest mode. Do keep in mind though that the downside is with rest mode, historically it has not been the most, I should say, stable thing in terms of the PS4 jailbreaking universe. So do keep in mind that if you run into issues where, let's say, your system crashes going into rest mode or crashes coming out of rest mode, there might not be too much that you can do. And the best thing, in my opinion, is going to be to just fully turn off your system and turn it on and then jailbreak it when needed. Thankfully, with BDJB, it makes it really easy and really fast because you just need to run this disk. Still going on with the aftercare, let's address some common questions and even some update-related questions as well. Some people might be wondering, do I have to keep the BDJB disk in my system at all times? And the answer is no, you don't need to. In fact, you can actually just remove this right now. I personally do that because I do have a few games installed on here that I want to play, or if I'm going to emulate something, I can build that package and install it from a USB drive. But no, you don't have to keep the disk in there. You only need to load up the disk when you want to load up the jailbreak itself. Once a jailbreak has been loaded up, you can go ahead and eject the disk. However, for anybody who might be wondering if there's any harm to just keeping your disk in the drive, not necessarily, no. You should be okay. So if you know this is the only disk you're going to be using and you want to consistently be able to boot up into a jailbroken environment, then this will be fine. You can either keep the disk in or you can just load it in as needed. Doesn't really matter. In terms of firmware updates, we want to make sure our system is not going to be updated. Now the good news is whenever GoldHEN here is up and running, which you can verify by making sure the icon is coming up, but when GoldHEN is up and running, it actually actively blocks updates to the system. So even if you try to update the system, you won't be able to. But additionally, it always helps, like I've covered, to go into settings, go into System, Automatic Downloads, and just make sure all of these are disabled and you should be good at this point. I've been practicing this for a while. I've had this system since it was on firmware 1.76, and I've updated accidentally exactly 0 times. So as long as you stick to that and just make sure you're good there, you should be okay. And finally, what about the updates to the jailbreak itself? Well, there's 2 components here. There's BDJB and there's GoldHEN, and there's ways that you can update both of them. I'll show you how to do it, and it's really simple. You're just going to need a Blu-ray disc, and you're going to need a USB drive depending on which component you're updating. The first one will be if a developer such as GoldHEN or even any other developers end up issuing updates to BDJB. Maybe there's some more fixes, maybe there's support for a higher firmware, we don't know. But if there's an update in the future, it's pretty simple to do. You can go over to wherever the page is. Here I'm going to use BDJB 1250 as the example. Go to the releases, and then download the ISO that you're going to need. Like I said, this one is the Lapse ISO. And just like before, you can open up Image Burn, make sure your disk drive is connected, make sure you have a blank or a rewritable Blu-ray disc in the drive, go to Write Image File to Disk, drag and drop your ISO in there, and once that's all set up, again, do the minimum write speed you can. You can verify it if you so wish to. I'm not going to do that here, and then you can just click on Burn. Since this is a BDRE, I'm just going to overwrite that. Wait a few seconds and it should write it over. And there we go, just like before. You can see it took about 32 seconds. We can click on OK. It's already ejected it, but that is how you can update your BDJB disk if you ever need to reburn it or you need to burn a new one. As for GoldHEN, Sistro is consistently working on this here, and you can actually check this out from the shop. You could see here that there's many different builds and betas that they are working on for GoldHEN, so GoldHEN is regularly updated. Now, whenever there is a new update available for GoldHEN, you can just do the same thing as before. This, by the way, is going to be the official page for GoldHEN downloads, so don't get them from anywhere else, just get them straight from the developer. Either way, you can go over to the shop, grab the latest GoldHEN. Let's say there's a new update out, you can go ahead, click on it, and go through the download process. Once it's been downloaded, just go through the same process of extracting it into its own folder. Open up the GoldHEN folder, find the goldhen.bin, right click, copy it out, and now grab a USB drive. Again, make sure it is either exFAT or FAT32. Go into the USB drive, right click, and paste. Now you're going to see a old payload.bin, and if you're going to be updating here, you just need to delete the old payload.bin, take the new GoldHEN, right click, rename it, and call it payload. And that's it. Now once that's done, we can eject our USB drive and go back over to our console with our BDJB disk. Now in order to update GoldHEN on the system, your console must not be jailbroken in order to replace that payload. So in order to do that, we're just going to go ahead, do a full power cycle, and restart our PS4. Now once your console restarts, it'll bring you over to the XMB. If you haven't already done so, plug in your USB drive, pop in your BDJB disk, and just like before, go ahead, give it a launch. As it goes through the standard process, you'll see here that we see the lapse notification there. Now AIO patch has completed, but when it comes to the payload section here, check it out, it found one on the USB drive, it's executing it. It's been copied to the internal drive now. And at this point, congratulations, the latest GoldHEN, let's say you were updating it here, has been updated. So now once this has been updated, we can wait for the notifications to finish up. There we go. Once this is done, we can go ahead, close out of here as we do. And at this point, you can see our system is now in a jailbroken state, and it would now be running the latest version of GoldHEN that we've copied over. So you can go ahead, remove this disk if you want to, and you can even remove that USB drive because we're not going to need them now, since every time we boot up BDJB, it's just going to launch that payload from the internal drive. Either way, that is about it for this video here. I will say it's been fun revisiting the PS4 because it's been really nice to see how far GoldHEN has come and just how far the environment for having a modded PS4 is at this point. The last time I really worked on the PS4 here like this was nearly 4 years ago when the 9.00 jailbreak came out. I've been following the BDJB implementations for a bit. I didn't cover the 11.0 exploit, but here we are at 12.02 and it seems to be working wonderfully. And the nice thing is, I know everybody has their own preferences, but it used to be that if you wanted individual functionality, you essentially had to, as opposed to just running one payload, which is GoldHEN, you'd have to send multiple payloads for different things. So if you wanted a certain functionality, that would be a specific payload. Those different payloads still serve their reasons for existing, and they do still work. And there could be people who even prefer that if they only want to load up certain things, but I will say if you kind of want an all-in-one suite, so to speak, GoldHEN is definitely the best option, and I'm happy to see how far it's come. So it's been pretty great to see so far. Either way, that is about it for this video here. Hopefully it helped out. Hopefully you all enjoyed this. If you did, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone.